Hey everybody, this is Josh over here at Anthem Community Church. I'm here with our pastors, and we got Marty here, we've got John, and we've got Omar. And we just wanted to sit down and have a roundtable discussion on some of the current events that are happening in the world, some of the things that are kind of out of our control, things that we may or may not expect, and how we're supposed to respond as Christians, how we're supposed to look at these things. Is it the end of the world for us? Is Christ going to return tomorrow? But just wanted to open up the floor and just put out an opportunity just to discuss these things. I know recently some of the discussions we've been having at lunch relate to the stock market because John's he's kind of our financial guru. And so we look to him whenever we have questions for stock market and things like that. We look to Marty for our theological training and upbringing. And
Omar's fashion.
Omar's fashion, yeah, true. See, I'm taking some lessons. I don't know if this is getting there, but so.
I kind of have noticed that. Yes.
Well, yeah. There's a lot of like-minded people here, which is good. At the same time, we have some opinions based on obviously our upbringings and things like that and different things, but we're all focused on one thing, which is looking at the Word of God for our direction and how we respond as believers. So I just wanted to open up the floor, and maybe we can talk about. I know this morning there was a shooting which was unexpected. It was caught on camera. It was all over the news. It took a big part of the morning,
let's talk about that.
The morning news cycle this morning.
Let's talk about that. So you have a reporter doing the morning news, and on live television you have somebody walk up behind the cameraman, and he shoots the reporter and the cameraman while they're on live television this morning.
And he recorded it.
And recorded it, yeah. And he was doing his own kind of almost version of Periscope or whatever.
Right.
Even adjusting the camera view to his gun and all of those kinds of things. I mean, when you first hear things like that, I mean, obviously the first reaction is, jeepers, what's going on with that? But then the more that's come out, as often happens in these situations, there's a story behind it. And this guy used to work at the television station a couple of years ago. He was let go. And then this cameraman and reporter has some kind of connection with this guy, not necessarily a good one. So there's some type of revenge type of thing that could be playing on this, other than just the sheer evil of it. I think as I've thought about this particular shooting, the thing that jumps out at me is kind of what I've been thinking about this afternoon is, again, it's our behavior matters. You've got this reporter. But nobody deserves to be shot, obviously, in this kind of deal. It's a horrific thing, and innocent people get killed in all kind of horrific ways on a daily basis around the world. But we do have to be careful how we treat other people, what we say, because all of those things can come back on us. And that's just kind of the thing that's the wickedness of it, or the sinfulness of it, of somebody that has the inability to deal with the pain in his life, whether that's a mental problem or just just evil in his mind or whatever, to go and do that. There is a story to it, and I think that's part of it that I think we always got to remember to ask and look at is what's the story behind it.
More and more, as we have social media platforms and as we have cell phones for selfies and all other kinds of fun stuff, our society seems to be kind of rolling into a very selfish trend. We are all about us. What am I doing? What's happening to me? I don't really care about what's going to happen to you, regardless of what I do, or the consequence of my actions may or may not affect somebody else, but I really don't care. And that's what we typically are seeing out there right now. We see events like this that lead into that, just kind of feed into that selfishness, whatever this person may or may not be going through. I mean, ultimately, we all know that we all need Jesus, and that's what will satisfy that.
Yeah, well, and here's what I find interesting about it as well, is that the first thing he does, he makes a video, and then he gets on Twitter and he starts ranting on Twitter. And what concerns me is that as technology progresses, as social media progresses, we're seeing this isolation happen in people. And just like we talked about earlier, the importance of community and the importance of having people in community. And this guy chose to isolate himself and really just take himself out of society and interact with society through social media.
And we also don't know. We don't know all the story. But when you say he chose to isolate himself, I think very much so he chose to do that. But I think we also have to understand that we have responsibilities, like what you're saying, is that it's real easy for us to get into such a selfish mindset that I'm the only one that matters. To instead of taking ownership and taking responsibility for some of it, because he may have been isolated because people shunned him or pushed him away. I mean, we'll probably never know all of the story that went on with this. And so while he certainly chose to be isolated, sometimes our behavior and our treatment of other people can be the catalyst that pushes them towards that isolation. So just this whole lack of personal conviction and personal responsibility for our behaviors, I think it's a pretty big thing.
Sure.
Talk about that, because I think when we talk about personal behavior and making choices in those situations, and when somebody is in that much pain and they get to a point where they are that filled with rage and anger to get to the point where they're going to make a plan to carry out such a intense action, they're obsessed with that emotion, and to ignore or to put on a lower level the spiritual aspect of that, the fact that we're all competed ground. Like there are forces trying to get each of us to do stuff, and we're either going to go and we're going to operate on the side of evil or we're going to operate on the side of good. And that sounds really, really simplistic, and it is. It's very simplistic, but that narrative has been subjugated to Marvel Comics, and it seems like it's disassociated from the struggles that's very real in everybody's very real life. And I'm fascinated right now with this idea of if you remove good, if you remove Christ, if you remove the morality of the Holy Spirit, and your conviction is totally based upon your own desires and your own needs and getting what you think is going to make you feel good, then you are totally opening yourself up to influence and domination by the evil.
And I found it interesting as well that, his validation came. Everyone, as crazy as you are, he needed to be validated in some way, and he used Twitter and social media to find that validation. I found that to be really interesting.
Sure. Well, that's one of the dangers we see of social media. This increase in connectivity has a simultaneous effect of disassociating, because we have this illusion of community, but we don't really have anybody that's got our back or anybody that's going to give us a hug or a high five and say, "What's going on? Tell me what's up." I'm sure that this guy didn't have a whole lot of friends that he was hanging out with in healthy relationships.
Well, and our belief system, being that we believe in Christianity, we believe in the God of the Bible, which means that we believe in a devil, we believe in Satan, we believe in demons. And I know for some people that may sound crazy, and often we say, everybody believes some level of crazy, but that's what we're basing our life on and our belief on. And one of the things that we know over and over in Scripture, that what the devil tries to do is he's a deceiver. He wants us to deceive. He wants to deceive us, and the primary way he deceives us is he tries to put something in our life and make it look like that it's real, but it's really not real. When the substitute for sex for love, so many people fall into this trap that, like, if I'm having sex, that means I'm in a loving relationship. No, and he's separated those things and got all of that confused. And you can see that with social media. You got all these friends on Facebook, but you don't really have any true real life friends. And you can have all these connections. I follow Twitter, and I got all the people that I follow on Twitter, and all of these things are flowing in, and I feel like that I'm a part of their life when I'm not a part of their life at all. So there's this real sense of phoniness that's there. And if you don't have the friends, you don't have a community, you don't have a local church or a local pub or a local whatever to be connected with, where there's some reality, then maybe you do start buying the lie that life is a comic book, or it is a television show, or it is a movie. And people's minds just get so messed up that way. It's very sad, but it's also very real.
Well, and talking about conviction, we need healthy, like we were talking about, conviction, and for people to hold us accountable. And that doesn't happen when you're not in community. And if you're not talking to people and being honest with people and being real with people, you just got to have this fake fairy tale life that you're portraying on social media, and people think you're fine. And really deep down inside, you got.
And I think one of the things we need to learn as better to do is not freak out when someone is real with us. Because one of the reasons that people aren't real in a relationship, or they won't say what they really believe or really what they're struggling with, because people just freak out on them, and they say, well, you can't believe that, and which is a really dumb thing to tell someone, what they can't believe. I mean, you can or it's like telling somebody to stop feeling a certain way. You can't do that. So we've got to be smarter, to create an environment that allows people to ask their questions and have a safe place that they can do that, and that we can struggle out loud and openly, and not think that we're condemned because of what we're struggling. I mean, I feel very strongly that we should be judged for our behavior, because our behavior has consequences. But we got to be real careful when we judge people based on their questions or their struggles. I don't think anybody should ever be judged based on their struggle. And if you don't have some kind of environment where you can state, hey, this is what I'm struggling with, this is the problem that I have, this is what I'm thinking, and when you do that, people shut down on you, then it makes you become even more and more isolated. And I think parents, if you've got teenagers or children, that is an art. We've got to really practice to say it's okay for us to have these conversations, and I'm not gonna, let's have it. Let's whatever it is that we can talk about. Let's talk about. Let's just don't be deceptive. I mean, obviously this guy's been incredibly deceptive in what he did, and beyond having mental issues and all other kind of things to do something like that. So.
Well, and as Christians, we have to be in that type of environment, like you're saying, where we can be honest with each other. But unfortunately, we don't see that going on a lot in churches. We don't see Christians being honest and being, honest of what they're struggling with and what's going on. And when we see, programs like AA and all the reason that they're successful and people actually are able to overcome addiction and problems is because they're honest with each other. And so as Christians, we have to be honest with each other.
Yeah, and as Christians to say, okay, if I believe that there is one true creator God, and he created the entire universe, he created me, he loves me, he wants to have a relationship with me, he's provided a way for me to have a relationship with me, and I've entered into that relationship with him, and he is my father, he is my protector, he is my sustainer, he's my comforter, he is all of those things, then why in the world would I ever be worried or afraid about what anybody thinks? Or what anybody's saying? Or anybody? I mean, as a Christian, I should be the least offended person on the planet. I should never be offended by those kinds of things, and I certainly shouldn't be scared of stuff. So as Christians, one of the things I think, we got to get our heads around is if we do truly serve the one all-powerful, all-knowing God, then we need to act like it. We need to talk like it. We need to believe like it. We need to. We need to understand that.
Oh, no, I just think it was, kind of a reminder of a couple weeks ago at church when you talked about how some of us have certain sin struggles that are different from another. You're going to have yours that you struggle with, I'm going to have mine, and so forth around the table. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I just look at you and say, well, you're more of a sinner than I am, or anything like that. We in essence have to put ourselves in the shoes of that person and be able to say, well, I've got my own issues that I'm struggling with. He or she has her and his own issues that they're struggling with. We're all on the same page, and we're here to help each other through those things. Because again, it's about who you surround yourself with. when you're an alcoholic, you don't go into the bar. When you're a drug addict, you don't go down to downtown and find some drugs, or where people are selling drugs. You keep yourself away from that, and instead you put yourself in a place where people don't have those struggles. They may have other struggles, but they don't have those struggles, so that they can kind of help you stay out of that, falling back into that sin or that issue that you have. And it helps us relate to one another as human beings, right? Because we all know what it's like to struggle and to go through these things. I mean, some of us, even here sitting at the table, we have different upbringings. I was brought up in a Christian home, so my lifestyle was different than yours. You weren't. And so there were things like that will affect how we react to this day and what we need from each other.
To a shooting, or to the stock market going down 2,000 points in 6 days to going up 600 points in one day. I mean, there's all kind of things that happen in and through a day or through the week or the course of our lives. And you just have to, that coming back to what are we grounded to? And I think a lot of times what we're seeing more and more in culture, and I think that's the key. I think we're seeing more of it. I don't think more of it's happening. I think we're seeing it more because of social media. Sure. And we can broadcast what we're talking about here out to the entire world.
Right.
And so you can see what people are doing. You can see what people are talking about. You can see what parties they're going to. You can see them at ball games and those kinds of things. There's obviously a lot more opportunity, but human nature, the sin nature, the problems that we have, that none of that stuff is new. That stuff's been around for since the beginning that we've been on the planet. But we just see it more. And so the more we see, the more we know of it, the more we're going to be thinking about it. It also gives us the opportunity to be able to do more about it.
True. Yeah, certainly. So, when looking at these types of things as a Christian community, and we're out, reaching out to maybe some believers, a lot of people that aren't, maybe have never been to church and things like that. One of the key points I believe to being able to reach out to each other for help is building trust, right? I mean, I'm not going to just walk up to a stranger and say, I've got problems, can you help, right? I mean, it's not going to happen, because I don't trust that person. Are they going to go with a bullhorn and tell everybody? I don't know, And like we were talking about earlier, you guys were talking about small groups and things like that and just community in general. And we were talking about, too, like Halloween, just reaching out to your neighbor, building that trust relationship first is what's going to be able to allow us, even as believers with like minds, be able to open up to each other. It's integral.
A key word there that I kept hearing you say was building. And people don't build anymore. Because we live in a Twitter world, because we live in a Snapchat or whatever that thing is, or Vines that are 8 seconds. I mean, you just think about, it used to say, you used to dedicate 2 hours to watch a movie. Now you want to see stuff in 8 seconds, and so we don't build anything anymore. We don't know how to stay engaged and to take the time to do it because we want it in an Instagram.
Right. Well, it's funny. I mean, comedians, the most famous comedians, and when they do their comedy skits and different things, they build up to it. They build up to this funny moment, and then even then, they'll interweave different things they've done previously. And like you're saying, we don't really see that anymore.
So, Pastor Marty, when you look at the world right now, and we're so aware of all these different kinds of things that are going on, what is something that concerns you, or what is the thing that concerns you most, and why?
What concerns me most, I think it depends on the day and what conversation I've just had. I mean, sometimes what concerns me most is parents' complete and total inability to parent their children. That's a concern. Sometimes I'm completely concerned about people's lack of being able to take ownership or take responsibility in something. But when I look at my world, and my world very much is a Christian world,
I have to bow out. I have an appointment.
All right, and they're here.
Yeah,
Good.
and they're here.
Good.
Very good. Thanks so much.
Bring 'em in.
See you.
To me, is that one of the things that just keeps hitting me is the number of people who claim to be Christians but who do not live in a Christian manner. That is huge. And what that does is other people are looking and saying, this person claims to be a Christian, but they're living this way, doing these things, saying these things.
So their beliefs are worthless.
And so their beliefs are worthless. And so what they believe in isn't real. What they believe is phony. It's just as phony as Facebook friends. It's just as phony as any other thing. And it just there's such people's, so that goes back to people's lack of the Bible. I mean, how if we're living in an Instagram world, then who's got time to read the Bible?
Sure. Well, one of the things, if I can interject, is we put so much value and time and effort into our careers. I will study for a test, a certification. I will look for a way to get that next promotion. What I'm not always focused on is what happens after death. What happens to my eternal future. I'm looking at what happens to my worldly future and the things that are taking place, in my life today. And it's really a renewing of your mind to be able to look at life in a different way, saying, what am I doing for my future with God? What am I doing for my future in eternity rather than what am I doing here on this planet? What is that next promotion going to get me here compared to another treasure in heaven or winning another soul for Christ?
Yeah. And the number of people that claim to be Christians that are not, that's a huge thing for me, for what I see. And then I think another just general thing is the lack of honesty. People just aren't honest. And within, you talk to someone who says that they're an atheist and they don't believe in God, they're not honest with the questions that they have. They're not honest with the holes that are in their theology to say that there is no God. And then you talk to somebody who's a staunch believer in God, and they're not honest with the holes and the questions that Christianity brings up.
Sure.
And so I think the more honest that we can get and the more real that we can get and the more we can say, hey, here's my real struggle. Let's talk about this. But I don't know if people can do that because everybody gets offended, and that's been a big deal, in the past couple of months is everybody's offended by something. And again, man, what's the? I just get to the point where I think what would happen if we all just said, hey, you know what? I just simply disagree with you, and that was it.
We're okay with it.
And we're okay with that. And
Sure.
You don't have to take it personal. You don't have to be offended by it. And then there's all kind of things that are tied into that. When people think that, the only way that I can be validated is you have to agree with me. And so there's something that's missing there.
Sure.
Then again, I'm always going to go back to the fact that I've placed my faith in one all-knowing, all-powerful Creator God. And if He loves me, and He has provided a way for me to have a relationship with Him, and I truly believe that, I'm good. I'm good. It helps to have people to eat dinner with.
Sure.
And it helps to do life with people.
Absolutely.
And it helps to do fun stuff, and it helps to have a job, and it helps to be healthy. All of those things matter, but ultimately if I'm with God and I'm with Him, then it doesn't matter.
Sure.
It just doesn't matter.
What if this shooter today had a different idea of who he was? If his identity was firmly seated in his sonship, he's like, I'm a child of God.
Right.
And if that one thing gets in there and starts flipping switches, then it's really, really difficult to pull the trigger on somebody that is, by very definition, your sister.
Well, you never get to that point where you hate somebody so bad that you want to take their life, or that you're so twisted in your own mindset because you know who you are.
Yeah, and you got the internal Holy Spirit thing going, hey, you got to forgive. You're not supposed to carry this anger. This anger is going to kill you.
Right.
Yeah. And it did. All right. I don't know.
Yeah.
Did he die?
I don't even know. I don't know.
No, as far as I know, he was pulled over by the cops, shot himself.
Yeah, I heard he was in critical.
Critical
Yeah,
condition was the last time I heard
haven't
anything. But one of our viewers on Periscope here was saying that they had listened to the daily devotional that we do Tuesdays through Thursdays, and they were kind of commenting on the struggle that they have in just living as a Christian in everyday life with all of the almost like the backpack full of weight that you're carrying around because of the pressures that you get from the world. Not necessarily that they love what's in the world, but that there are still, exactly. You're going against the flow, and there's a struggle there.
And there's the one thing that's amazing about all the technology that we have. Yeah. Every piece of a technology equipment I have, and I have the iPhone, I got the iPad, I got the big old flat screen TV, I got the computer, I got all that, and every one of them have an off on, an off button. and I have the ability to turn it off.
That's right.
And I don't have to watch it, and I don't have to see it, and I have the ability to turn all that off and sit down on my patio and open up an old-fashioned Bible and actually read it, or have a cup of coffee with a real person.
Yeah.
And
or take a Sabbath.
Or take a Sabbath take a Sabbath and get away with it. But it is hard. I mean that without question is hard.
Yeah.
And it's not harder today than it's ever been.
Right.
It has always been hard.
Agreed.
Apparently, it was pretty hard for Adam and Eve.
Right.
Because they had one rule and they couldn't do it. So it's always been hard.
The struggle is real.
The struggle is real. So we can't buy into that lie. And like we were talking about in that John was writing in 1 John this morning, he said, don't love the world. And the world being this evil, corrupt system. And part of that evil, corrupt system says that the only way that I can be validated is if you validate me. Right. That's part of the evil system. Sure. And if John chooses not to validate me, I'm good with that.
Right.
Because I know who does.
Yeah, unless it's for parking in downtown LA.
Then
you might be offended.
Yes, right. No, I do want you to validate my parking.
I mean, that's one of the greatest things I think about Anthem Community Church is that where we meet, we rarely have cell reception. So literally, it's a blessing in disguise where when we walk into that building, we can actually be with humans.
Right.
The phone goes in the pocket, and we're not concerned about who just texted me because we're not going to get it. We're not going to see it until afterwards. And I think it brings it's almost like a forced power off, which is unheard of.
It's interesting. Maybe at churches should start doing that. And I've never lived anywhere where it's cold, but I've been to those places to visit, and they got like coat rooms. I remember when we went to Russia. And we were there in the wintertime, and like every time we went into a restaurant, there was like this whole dedicated room for coats and boots and stuff. And I was like, this is so weird because I'm from South Mississippi and South Louisiana, and now South Nevada. So, but maybe we need to start having like cell phone rooms at church.
Check.
Cell phone check. You have to you have to check your cell phone in order to come into the into church.
That
just
might not be too far away,
just to force us to unplug.
Yeah.
So. But
that's only one element. I mean, being at church is one element. The other elements that we have to help us are getting together at a coffee shop, talking through things with each other. I know us. We are not always here together as a staff for lunch, but what's cool is that there's always one or two of us that are, and we can go out and continue to develop and build those relationships, continue to get to know about each other. Know each other's struggles and kind of help each other stay on that narrow path.
And you just started kind of hanging out in a church the last 2 months. So you're kind of getting in the bubble, as I like to call it. And I've spent the last 5 years in the bubble, and I don't want to ever forget what it was like to have nobody else around me that believed like I did. Right. When I came to Christ, I was really the only Christian I knew.
Sure.
So I had to start over and find all those relationships. So once I started to connect with other people, it is amazing how having people that stand next to you allows you to push through. So I got to learn how to pray up. I got to learn how to cling to my identity and the power that's available to me through the Holy Spirit.
Sure.
I got to meditate on that. I got to welcome the Holy Spirit to come into me and to fill me up. And I got to figure out what that means, because that sounds like some crazy, hoobie-jeebie stuff.
Sure.
I don't know what that word is.
Who wants a cookie?
Yeah.
But it's true, man. We're given the very power of God who sets up and lives inside of us.
Right.
And if we can't remember that, we can't call on that, and we can't remember that we have what it takes, then we're going to get run down, isolated, and beat up.
Yeah. Well, in my devotional this morning, the guy who wrote the devotional was talking about, we can't control the bad things that happen. We can't control shootings. We can't control the stock market. We can't control any of that stuff. And any of the stuff that's going on in our own individual life sometimes. So but we do have a choice on what am I going to focus on. Am I going to focus on God's glory and who He is, or am I going to focus on the aspects of this world?
Sure.
And that's a real choice. And when I focus on the aspects of this world, that's not going to take me to a good place. But if I will focus on God's glory, that gets me in the right
so
spot.
are you telling me I just need to turn my TV off and not pay any attention and not be offended by anything?
I'm not saying that, especially during football season.
Walk me through that.
But what I am saying is there needs to be times when I do turn the television off. Mm-hmm. There needs to be times when I do. We're trying to institute in our family where we have a certain time when all cell phones and everything goes in the basket and it's off, and so we can't have those kinds of things. So we do have to unplug. I mean, when God created the world, He took a day to rest. Then when He gave the commandments 3,000 or 4,000 years ago to this little tribe of people in the desert, and He said, I want you to take one day, one 24-hour period, and I don't want you to do anything. So if He was telling people to take a Sabbath like that 4,000 years ago, how even much more is that important today?
Sure.
When we literally, and I'm old enough to remember back in the day when I lived in the South that, stores actually closed on Sunday. I mean, that's gone. And we live in Las Vegas, so stores don't even close anytime. Everything's 24/7. And so needing to that's a discipline. That's a discipline to say, I have to unplug. I'm only going to watch this much news. I'm only going to watch about this. I'm only, and not get absorbed in all of that stuff. But it is a fine balance because we can't, God doesn't tell us to go stick our head in the sand either.
That's right. Well, and I think it's it comes around to anything else that we do in life, kind of like we were talking about career earlier, where if you're willing to put in some time on learning a musical instrument, or you're willing to put in some time to watch TV or sit down, with the family, why can't you be willing to put some time into shutting your phone off and literally having, finding that quiet place with God?
Yeah, somebody just, if you could do that question again, something about our family taking a Sabbath from electronics, but it faded away really quick.
Well, and while that comes back up, it reminds me of, I saw an advertisement a couple months ago for this paper towel holder. That the idea was that the mom would put the paper towel holder on the table, and it's literally a cell blocker. So all the phones so all the phones would shut off and not be available. But the
idea of taking a Sabbath from electronics, I think that's a great thing to do. To say, hey, we're going to have a certain day or at certain points of times. I can't read in my glass. I don't have my glasses on.
Yeah, it says it's hard, but it's been really good.
Yeah. And that's a plan. Again, how do we go about that? I got to have a plan. If I don't have a plan, nothing's going to happen. But we say from Friday night from 6 o'clock to the time we go to bed, all electronics go off, and we're together as a family or whatever. Are picking a whole day, but it is hard. It's difficult because these things have trained us. They have gotten all up in our business, and we feel like that we can't do anything without these. And if you don't believe that, go out to eat one night this week and leave your phone at home on purpose and see how you feel the whole time you're gone. You're going to feel.
You get fidgety.
You're going to feel. You'll start having withdrawals.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Where did I lose my phone?
Well, you know why?
It's a crazy feeling.
Every time this thing beeps, dopamine hits our brain. That's
literally
what
is an
happens,
addiction.
and we get a rush out of knowing that somebody is trying to.
Somebody else
contact
cares
us.
about me,
right? Or needs
Or
us.
something I care about just
Yeah.
happened.
Right. Exactly.
And if only we could live our day realizing that the God that created the sun and the moon and the oceans, that He thinks about us while we're sleeping more than there are grains of sand on the planet. If we could get our heads around that and our hearts around that, talking about a dopamine rush.
Yeah.
That is an amazing dopamine rush.
We call that worship.
That is called worship. That is true.
That's right.
That is true. That is very true.
Well, very good. Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time today to sit down and kind of chat through a few of these different items, just current events that are happening here. For all you viewers out there, we appreciate your time. We'll be doing this on a regular basis, and go ahead and follow us, and you'll get an alert when we start this and do this again. We'll be doing other subjects. This morning we did a subject on community. Tomorrow we're going to be doing a Periscope on worship, which is going to be very fun.
Nice little segue.
So it's a good little segue there. But I appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for taking the time, and we'll see you next time.